What is up, Ravens flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. Chance and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin here with my co-host James Haskell and a very special guest. Fortunate enough to have Ryan Mink from Ravens.com joining us for this call. Thanks so much for coming on with us, Ryan.
Uh-oh.
Lost
you
Ryan.
Guys you're breaking up on me.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Thanks for coming on with us, Ryan. Appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, my pleasure.
We're like Glenn said from Ravens.com, the Baltimore Ravens. We couldn't be more excited about it. We've been watching you and Garrett. We had the pleasure of, I don't know if you know this, but I saw Garrett in Fells Point, and I literally got out of my car and ran him down. I think I embarrassed him while we were in line getting some food, but I'm shameless, so I just don't care. And so
that sounds about right. That Garrett would be out in Fells Point. That sounds about right.
Yeah,
was it at a bar?
No, well, he was at the Fells Point market.
Nice.
So no bar, but he could have been on his way there.
There you go.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
That's awesome. But we want to talk to you about some awesome storylines in regards to the Ravens this year, some roster predictions, all the above. So we'll get right into it here. So our first question, we start with the cornerback room. The cornerback position has fans intrigued this year because it seems like the Ravens have too many good corners for the roster spots they have available. Wink the other day just talked about, spoke glowingly of Anthony Averett. You have four locks in our estimation with Humphrey, Peters, Young, and Smith. That's Jimmy Smith. The Ravens have a few guys competing for the remaining spots. So this is really our question. You don't have to pinpoint all names, but let's start with this. How many corners do you think they'll ultimately keep, and who could be left off the final roster as far as cornerbacks go?
Yeah, well, I think really the competition there is between Chris Westry, and then the last spot, it's either going to go to Westry or Sean Wade. So I think that's a pretty good competition, but I would say that would put the Ravens at 6 if they kept one of them, because Anthony Averett's a lock to make the team as well, in addition to the 4 that you said. And so that puts you at 6 with one of those two guys on, as long as we're keep counting Brandon Stevens as a safety, which I think I am. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if both of those guys make the team. I don't think that they want to part ways with a rookie 5th round pick in Sean Wade. That's somebody they invested in that I think they feel like, hey, based off of what he showed the year before last at Ohio State, he's got a lot of potential. He just needs to kind of, get back in that groove, kind of work back in the slot and potentially be, if things work out, Tavon Young's replacement in the slot. So I don't think they want to risk losing him on waivers, and cornerbacks get snapped up, right? The league, like the Ravens have experienced, unfortunately, in years past, the rest of the league knows that cornerbacks are at a premium and you can't have too many of them. And that's kind of the outlook that the Ravens have long had. And then so I don't think they want to lose Wade or risk putting him on waivers. And then for Chris Westry, quite frankly, the guy's just played well enough to earn a job. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what it boils down to, is you're like, all right, yeah, he won it. You know what I mean? And so, here's a long outside corner that, if Jimmy Smith were to get hurt, we've never heard about that happening, but just if that were to happen, or if Anthony Averett, something were to go down, like Chris Westry would be one of your top backups kind of at that outside corner spot. So when you're thinking about, okay, what position groups could they carry an extra guy at, I would point to cornerback being that spot where maybe they go with 7.
Yeah, certainly going to be interesting, because awfully deep room at safety too. And I know that Ravens in years past, they've kept 9 total DBs. They've kept 12 total DBs. So it's really a lot of wiggle room there. And maybe it could come down to injuries or special teams contributors to ultimately decide that. But staying in that cornerback room, Marcus Peters is an interesting guy to me. Here's a guy who has always been successful, always put up great numbers, but is now, is on his 3rd team. And it's shocking when you look at, just how far and away he is the best at intercepting the ball since he's been in the league. But since he's been in Baltimore, there hasn't been much to hear as the negative. I mean, when he first arrived, he was a little short with the media, a little bitter about being traded. It seemed like from LA, had a chip on his shoulder, which I think is still probably there. But
well, we saw that on that Monday Night Football game, right?
Oh yeah, he was feeling himself. But now he's he's a recruiter of Justin Houston. He's really bought into the city of Baltimore, and the city of Baltimore certainly embraced him. Do you think there's been a shift in his mentality, or has this always been him and he's just allowed to be himself here in Baltimore?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter, to be honest. I don't think Marcus Peters has really changed from who he is. He's a trash talking kind of, he loves the game. He studies the game, and he's going to kind of always be himself. Like, he's just very LA, and I think the Ravens have a long, track record of welcoming in these guys that sometimes might wear out their welcome somewhere else. Steve Smith is a prime example, and Steve loves Carolina, and he's going to, retire as a Carolina Panther. But, to a degree, he wore out his welcome there. And the Ravens said, well, hey, we'll take you, and they've welcomed in some big personalities into that locker room. And John Harbaugh does a great job of saying, hey, you be you, man. As long as you're not taken away from the team, if you're not hurting the team, be you. We like guys who have a little attitude here, who have fun and all that stuff. Just, love on your teammates, be a good teammate. Don't hurt the team, and you do you. And so I think that's what Marcus Peters has been able to do here in Baltimore, and he's been embraced by, Marlon Humphrey and the other cornerbacks, and he and Harbs get along well, and they kind of use him to what his strengths are. It's not like you're not trying to fit, a square peg into a round hole. They're like, hey man, go make some plays on the ball. Like, don't leave your safeties out to dry. You need to communicate with those guys, but if you want to communicate with them and take some chances, hey, that's what you do best. Do it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, I think that it's just been a really good fit all the way around.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100% there. And my next question kind of feeds off of that. And in 2019, I feel like the Ravens had a certain swagger to them, right? Mm-hmm. There was a certain sense of confidence. And even, with the acquisition of Marcus Peters certainly added to that, amongst obviously the 14-2 record didn't hurt, but really, I felt like last year, and this could have been more of a national thing, but I also felt like internally watching some of the body language of the players and the team, I felt like they were dealing with the pressure of 2019, trying to live up to those expectations. But what Glenn and I are hoping for this year is some of that swagger and that looseness comes back. Yeah. Do you see that in the locker room? Do you see that when you're with the guys? Because that's something I noticed when Lamar came on the lounge, is that he seemed much looser this year, like back to having fun. Do you see that with the other guys as well?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we're not in the locker room because of COVID. The reporters still aren't in there. So, to be completely honest, myself and the other reporters just don't get those kind of vibes as much as we used to. So we're just not around them. But I will say that I think that this team and the offense, and specifically Lamar, were affected a lot by the lack of fans being there and by COVID and just all the headache of that. Like, I wrote about this last week, I think. One of the lasting images for me from that 2019 season was the Monday Night Football game in LA, and it was Lamar and Hollywood, doing the dance off the field, after one of their 6 touchdowns, that Lamar threw, or 5, whatever it was. And just the fun that they were having playing the game, that to me, besides his legs and his athleticism, that's one of the things to me that makes Lamar Jackson special, is the dude, it just has a lot of fun playing the game. It's like Lamar never left South Florida, playing in his high school games to him. He makes guys look foolish. He has fun. He laughs with his teammates. He celebrates, and that celebration with his teammates and with the crowd, he's fed off of that. How many big games, night games, primetime games, did we see Lamar at his best, where he was living in that spotlight. And so I think not having the fans there, being in the stadium last year sucked. It sucked. It was just so weird at how silent it was. And all you heard was the benches and people, the random trainers or trainers' families in the stands being there was no excitement. And so it was just, I really think coupled with, like, I think you said, the pressure of the previous season and like just the disappointment of not having that energy around did kind of throw them off. And Lamar, I think teams did a better job of bottling Lamar up. They were better prepared for our offense. Our offense hadn't taken that next step in terms of the passing game. So Lamar got off to a little bit of a slower start than he did the previous year. And I think that kind of played into it, and he was playing a little tight. And then midway through the year, they're like, all right, screw it. We're just going to run the ball, and we're going to let Lamar run like crazy, and we're just going to do what we do best and go on a run. And that's what they did. But then, they hadn't kind of advanced the other parts of the offense enough to where, hey, when you get in the playoffs and you can't run the ball, can you pass it now? Can you challenge teams? Can you do more? And they hadn't developed that aspect of the offense enough to get them over that hump. So it's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but
Ryan, so
you think some of the magic was missing.
Right. So you mean to tell me that you weren't making up for 70,000 plus people?
Yeah, you weren't screaming your head off, Ryan.
Chest painted and big horn and everything else, man.
I got really salty during the Chiefs primetime game because the Chiefs ownership group was like, I was sitting like outside a suite, and they were like 3 or 4 suites down, and the Chiefs got out to that big, like kind of like a big lead, and they were just hooting and hollering, and like you can hear everything that they're saying. And I'm like, you are in our stadium, my friend, like, and so it was just bothering me. And then when Duvernay ran that kickoff back, I was like shouting over there. I was like, yeah. And then I was like, whoa. Reel it in. That's the owner of the Chiefs. I don't want him like complaining to Steve Bisciotti that he will, some guy up there. I just stopped myself.
Well, we appreciate you trying, man. We like seeing the fan come out for sure.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Lamar Jackson, and he said at the beginning of the year he wants to become more of a vocal leader as he enters his 4th season. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, have you noticed any change in that regard? Has he been more vocal to some of the young guys, maybe some more input with the coaches? Have you seen any difference in his behavior?
No, I have not. I honestly, I think that's great that Lamar said that, and like, I kind of actually think that's a cliche that like a lot of guys, like you hear that a lot from Tyus Bowser right now, like he signed his deal and it's like, all right, I'm going to become a leader. And like, you don't become a leader. Lamar is a leader. I'm not trying to say he's not, but like, you don't just change your style of leadership. Right. Lamar's a leader because like everybody really likes him. They think he's really, really good. He works hard. He cares a lot. He's super passionate about it. Like, yeah, he really, really cares. And like, and he's just got that kind of Lamar magic, like humble, he's kind of like Joe in a way, like Joe was a leader because he was just so real. And like, Lamar's got a lot of that to him too, different personalities, but like that factor that like draws people into you. And it's like, Lamar's got that, but for him to all of a sudden turn into like a Ray Lewis, I'm not even saying like even at that level, but like, he's going to communicate like that and talk like that. Like Lamar is who Lamar is. He's not going to change. So no, I haven't noticed anything.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense as well. Glenn coined him as the most genuine superstar in modern sports, and I think that's a good way to put it.
I mean, the guy was taking like selfies at gas stations and stuff this offseason, like playing hoops in Dick's Sporting Goods.
That's awesome. So one of the things that Glenn and I have been dying to ask, and I think Glenn a little bit more than me, is about Ben Mason. So, Ben Mason is a lot of people what they think the eventual replacement to Patrick Ricard. But, I know that we were at the game, and Glenn immediately when he made that play on special teams and just crushed that guy, Glenn looked over and kind of gave me a look like, dude, did you see that? Mm-hmm. Right. So I certainly know that a lot of people are excited about him, but Pat Ricard is also still out there playing his position at a Pro Bowl level. So how do you see the Ravens keeping not one, but 2 fullbacks on the roster when most teams don't even carry one? And do you think that Ben is the eventual replacement for Ricard? I'll tell you that I don't think he is. I think Patrick Ricard is more rare. I think he's getting a little disrespected here.
Yeah.
But that's just me. Anyway, I'd like to know what your thoughts are.
I feel you. Yeah. I don't think they're going to keep both. I don't think they're going to keep Ben Mason on the 53-man roster. I just don't. you can't keep two fullbacks, like, and honestly, I don't think that he would get claimed off waivers by anybody, because hear me out on this. If you're a team that runs a fullback, that uses a fullback a lot in your offense, right? And there's not a ton of those teams already, right? Like the Ravens are one of, I don't know how many there are, but I can count them on one hand. Maybe, maybe there's two hands, probably less,
right.
But if you're a team that uses a fullback a lot, you already have your fullback, right? Like, you're not going to get to September 1 and be like, you know what, we need to get that fullback, and see what we can do with them. Like, barring an injury, like, nobody's going to pick up somebody else's fullback. So, and so I just feel like the Ravens can probably get him on the practice squad. Maybe he's one of those guys that you practice squad protect every week just to be sure, in case somebody else does have an injury and you want to protect them. Because, I think it's too early to say whether or not he's Patrick Ricard's replacement. I just haven't seen enough yet. I will agree with you that Patrick Ricard is a rare beast. I'm so impressed with that guy, the way he catches the ball even now. I mean, he makes some nice catches in practice, like plucking them off the shoe tops, where you're like, gosh, this guy used to be a defensive lineman, and so, maybe Ben Mason can evolve into that, but I don't think that, like, he's in a position right now where he's earned a spot on the 53-man roster. The only scenario that I could see them keeping him and Pat Ricard is if Boyle isn't ready to go and you feel like that Ben Mason is a better blocking option than Eric Tomlinson is at tight end, because to me, Tomlinson, like, if you're looking for the third tight end to be a receiver, you would go with Josh Oliver. If you're concerned that you don't have enough blocking prowess on the edge and you need somebody to be there in case Boyle's not ready to go week 1, then Eric Tomlinson's probably the best pick for that job, or Ben Mason.
Yeah, now I think I mentioned on the show a few times, Ben Mason could also be a perfect candidate for that old IR stash too, because that would mean if they do get him to the practice squad, that means they have to cut him, right? I mean, they have to, and that's something they typically don't do with same year draft picks much. So that would be quite surprising. So we might also see Ben Mason turn an ankle in the parking lot, and find himself on the IR.
I feel like his lower back is hurting already.
Right. It's got to be.
I thought they were tuning us up with the foot issues. Like day one, as soon as he walked in, he was having feet issues. I'm like, all right, here we go.
That might spring up again.
Yeah, get a flare up really going on.
Yeah, and also the Ravens, they seemed proud when they had that streak going of consecutive years with an undrafted free agent making their final 53 until, of course, it ended. And I think a lot of that might have been due to the COVID issues. But who would you say, if they were to get back onto that streak and keep that going again, which I think they are proud of, and they use that as a way to recruit those high-level undrafted free agents, who do you see as the front runner, or do you even see a front runner who could make this team as an undrafted guy?
Yeah, I don't think that any are going to make the team this year again. And I think it's really a byproduct of the Ravens have had a lot of draft picks in recent years. They just have a lot of good young players that they want to keep who they picked. So they just really don't have much roster space. And I mean, if one guy was going to make the team, I guess I would probably say Ardarius Washington, the safety, would be my front runner for the job. Just because, I think that he could potentially beat out one of those safeties. I mean, it would probably have to be Levine, but I doubt that he could beat out Levine just because of what Levine brings from a special teams perspective and leadership perspective. Like that would be an upset in my opinion. So no, I really don't see one making it.
Wow. Bold, Ryan, bold.
Who do you guys think is going to make it?
No, I think Ardarius was our favorite, but it's a crowded DB room. I mean, you talk about Geno Stone's been balling out. I mean, you mentioned Levine, and then you got to put Brandon Stevens in there, who's, I think, shocked everyone with how far along he's looked thus far. When, honestly, we did our live draft show, we didn't even know who he was when his name was called. And
they had him listed as a running back.
Yeah, we literally couldn't find a scouting report on him the night he was drafted. So I mean, I think just the fact that he's so far along, and then Stone making the strides he's made, and the fact that he might be the only true safety behind those two starters, it's going to make it a crowded room and a tough
And then you
spot.
add Westry to all that.
Right. Exactly. If you're
unique
keeping
in
an
his own
extra
right.
cornerback.
Yeah, so that all of it's going to be interesting for sure. But I think our Darius is our guy. And I was really excited about him coming out. But this year I feel like, and every year I feel like the Ravens do this. I remember that Ravens Wire, and I'm sure that obviously you saw this right before the Tennessee Titans playoff game. John and Eric, kind of embraced and said, "Look, we built this team for this, right?"
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really cool because they identified an issue and they attacked that issue, right? And Derrick Henry was not going to run the football in that game. Through hell or high water, the guy was not going to run the football, right? Like, it just wasn't going to happen. So I feel like they've identified an area where they needed to improve. And that was the personnel with and coaching hires, I think, with T. Martin and Keith Williams. So what impact do you see from these new coaches making in the passing game?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you see, even when guys have been injured now, Rashad Bateman, being out, then you Sammy Watkins, Hollywood Brown, like, the offense still has some good days, like there's depth there where you see some of these guys, like a Jalen Moore, obviously with James Prochet and the kind of camp that he's had, Duvernay's had some really good days. Like, you just see the level kind of across the board rising. It's not only that they've added more talent, which they clearly did. They made that a priority this offseason, but it's just the coaching has kind of made everybody better. So I really see, and when you have some of the Ravens cornerbacks, saying, "Oh yeah, these receivers are like way better than previous years," that really tells you a lot too. So I think those guys can make a big difference. Like, it is impressive watching them on the field and how just tuned into the fine details that they are, just every single rep, like harping on this or that, it is really impressive.
So I got to ask this question. Who was it, Glenn, that we saw there? Was it Keith in the full sweats or was it T?
Oh, Keith Williams was in a full sweatsuit and it was 98 degrees and sunny.
Is
Some
that every
coaches
day?
are like that. Some guys are like that. They get that sweat, man. It's crazy. Like, it looks like they just came out of the shower at the end of practice. You're like, oh man.
I'm not trying to bring it in around that guy. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. They're on the fringe of the breakdown.
Because we were staying over with you, Ryan, and we were baking, just standing there in shorts and a t-shirt, and he's over there running. I mean, getting up in people's grill, letting them know what they're doing wrong in a full sweatsuit. I'm like, it's absolutely amazing. I love the passion, love the energy. Do you think, though, that they, we see what they're bringing as far as coaching on the field. Do you think that they also brought some schematic changes to the team when they came over?
Well, I think probably T did. That's really T's job, is to kind of help with the coordinating of the route combinations and those kind of things. So I'm sure that he brought some of those ideas to the table, and Greg probably absorbed some of that stuff. And, how much of it he utilized or not, I don't know. We'll never know. But, I do think that the Ravens coaches do a really good job of incorporating the ideas of their insistence into the scheme. And, they go to work every offseason kind of rebuilding it from the ground up. And so I'm sure that some of T's ideas got in there, because that's, I think, part of the reason why the Ravens wanted them was, this college passing, some of these college passing schemes are something to behold. And so, him bringing that in, I think, was part of the reason that he was hired.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you, he's still got the arm. I saw him out there. Yeah. He's still got that
snapping on a rope, man.
Yeah. And this next one kind of hits home a little bit for me, because I often find myself as the John Harbaugh defender. I'm still not really sure why he doesn't get the credit and frankly, the gratitude, I think, from fans. Simply because he's not a play caller on the offense or defensive side of the ball. They say he doesn't know football. It drives me crazy to think that a guy who's literally lived his entire life in football, and some fans still say, well, because he doesn't call plays, he doesn't know anything. He's just a rah-rah pat on your back guy. I don't buy that at all. And so as someone who sees the team operate as closely as you do, what are your thoughts on Coach Harbaugh as the head coach, and what kind of credit does he deserve for building a consistent winner?
Yeah, he deserves a ton of credit. I mean, John's a fantastic coach, and there's so much more to being a head coach than calling plays. I think fans don't really realize, like, all the things on a head coach's plate. I mean, we were talking about Marcus Peters. I mean, balancing personalities, knowing how to respond, knowing what buttons to push to challenge your team. And to say, like, John's still in tons of meetings. I mean, he goes to offensive meetings, defensive meetings, special teams meetings. I mean, his input on the different units and their scheme is definitely in there, and I think particularly on defense, he works with those defensive backs because he was, a secondary coach in the NFL. He gets with those guys a fair amount. So I think with the offense, he's not quite as involved from a schematic, coaching standpoint with the offense. That's not his background. But if he has an opinion, it'll be heard. And so, but yeah, John is just a great motivator. I mean, year after year, it's hard not to get stale, quite frankly, and you've seen other coaches, I think, like Andy Reid in Philadelphia, some of that it got stale, and Andy's a great coach, and he ended up, being let go and going to Kansas City. John just has this innate ability to kind of keep it fresh, keep it fun, but still challenge you and lets the players know it's time to work, So he's really mellowed out kind of in his later years. And part of it's just the confidence of knowing I'm one of the best coaches in the NFL, bar none, he's got this, I don't have to worry about proving myself, man. I've proven it, and I think that's honestly made him a better coach.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, not worrying about looking over your shoulder and just being confident that you're making the right decisions is everything. I think that, and Glenn and I both said this, John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin, probably the best leaders of men in the NFL. You're right. The ability that he has to recreate himself time after time after time is really cool. So Ryan, we'll let you go with this one. We talked about John Harbaugh there. I want to flip the coin over, talk about his counterpart, and that is Eric DeCosta. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have their eyes on Eric right now. To see, he's always working in the background. We heard about the calls over to Denver. So a lot of people are wondering, since he's seen as one of the best GMs in the NFL, is he going to be fleecing anyone else?
Maybe trading a backup kicker.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah.
Do you think another move
on the block here?
That's right. You think another move will be done before we head out to Las Vegas?
I don't think so. I think that Justin Houston was the last move, really. I don't think that Lamar's going to get a deal before week 1. It certainly doesn't seem to be trending in that direction, which both sides seem fine with. I think it wouldn't shock me if they re-sign somebody to an extension during the season, whether that be a Mark Andrews or a Bradley Bozeman. Let's say Bradley Bozeman is playing really well at center, and before the season's up, you say, all right, let's extend Bradley, keep him here and make him the long-term center. That wouldn't shock me. Averett's the other big name, but maybe they could reach a deal with Lamar, during the season. I doubt it, but maybe. So yeah, I would not rule out a trade around the trade deadline, the Marcus Peters-esque kind of fleecing of somebody. But that's really, I think, based off of injury or, where do you suddenly have a hole that you need to fix? And right now, I don't really see a hole on this team. I don't think they're going to trade for a guard. That's one thing that some people have hit us up about. I think they're more likely to trade a guard away, one of these young guards, than trade for a guard. So, I don't see any more blockbusters in our future.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you there. It's interesting because, we appreciate your time, Ryan. We did not talk about wide receivers. We did not talk about the offensive line.
Look at that.
And I tell you what, I feel like I got a lot of awesome information, and it was a total blast. So we appreciate it. I think everyone knows where you're at, but why don't you let the folks know what you're working on, where they can find you, maybe what your Twitter is, whatever. Give it a shout out.
You can hit me up at Ryan Mink on Twitter. Make sure you listen to The Lounge. Everybody should be subscribed to the Lounge and listening to that. And one thing you can keep an eye on that I'm working on is a big feature story on J.K. Dobbins for our cover story. We do one a month. Next one before the first regular season game is going to be on Dobbins. And I got off the phone talking with Dalvin Cook today. Those two are like BFFs. Nice. We trained together the past 2 years. So talked to Dalvin about him, talked to a lot of people in J.K. Dobbins' life. So it's going to be a good story. So tune in for that too.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know that Glenn and I both will, and we'll recommend everybody else as well. Ryan, thank you so much. Have a great evening. Get back to those kiddos, and we'll talk to you soon, man.
All right. Thank you, guys.